All right, welcome back, everybody, after a quarterfinals week here in Massachusetts Legacy League's 2026 winter season. And this was probably the best quarterfinals I've watched in Massachusetts. It was just energetic. It was loud. My ears were ringing after these games, just screaming the whole time, back and forth. It was awesome. This was awesome. And I actually did some math. The average shooting percentage from all the teams was 60%. So the worst shooting percentage from a team this week was 51%. So half of the shots that were taken this week went in. These games were crazy. They were super close. There's a lot to talk about. Next week's games are going to be awesome. Those matchups couldn't have been better. Yeah, I mean, only 2 games this week because the first 2 seeds had a bye, but we had some very close, awesome games, and we'll dive right into it. I'm joined by Steven and Matt this week. We got a lot to talk about, so stick with us. We'll be going at our first game, which was We Got Us versus Top Dogs. And We Got Us took this one 70-62. So this was the 3 versus 6 seed game. Yeah, We Got Us came out on top. Derek Revelis led the way, 31 points. He had 3 steals as well, doing everything he can on defense and offense like we usually see. I mean, his defense is just amazing, especially against a Top Dogs team that is, I would say, 80% offense and 20% defense. They usually let up the most points every week, but they fire back on offense with the incredible, probably the best 3-point shooting team statistically. They have so many good shooters on that team, but the defense from We Got Us really stepped up throughout the season, and it's just was at its peak right here in this game. Jamari came back. We haven't seen him, I think, in 4 weeks, but he's back. 20 points, 8 rebounds. He was a huge factor, and he kind of took him a little bit to get back into it, but once he caught his rhythm, he really made a statement and was like, yeah, we're back. Shy Hicks, only 8 points. He didn't play as much as, maybe we think he should have or would have, but that just shows how good Derek and Jamari were playing, because he didn't even need to do what he usually does. Usually, I say he is the most consistent player on We Got Us. Derek doesn't always shoot from the 3 very well, and that kind of messes up some of his games. But Shy has consistently been, I think, the leader and the best player on We Got Us so far this season. So him only scoring 8 points and winning in the first round here is huge. Kubi, defensively stepped up. Offensively, not as hot as the last couple games he played in, but defensively, he's doing what he does. For Top Dogs, Sean Yard, 33 points. Alan Leonard followed up. I think he had 13. Yeah, I just not. I mean, this was like a 2-point game in the final 2 minutes, but Top Dogs defensively just couldn't stop Derek. Especially in that last play. You'll see it in the top plays, but no one was matching how high Derek could jump, and it showed. Steven, I know you were on this game, so I want to give you a little bit of talk about how good Derek was this game.
Yeah, I mean, Derek clearly was the difference maker, having 31 points, 3 steals. But, I mean, I don't think – so Top Dogs kind of led this game for a long time. I want to say they were leading going into the half. I know confidently they were leading out that first quarter. They were started off down. Sean Yard had a killer start to the game, which made the lead seem a little unreachable. And Shy Hicks actually got the guys rallied, hit a nice clutch corner 3 to get their points on the board. And kind of once Derek started, because Derek, I believe, missed his first 3 shots, not just 3-pointers, but just shots in general. And then comes the second quarter, and now he's all of a sudden tearing it up for like 15 points and going into that second, third quarter stretch. And kind of brought We Got Us back, and then having the 3 steals to increase the lead. And once that happened, the Top Dogs, all they could do was foul and put everyone to the line. Jamari Robinson, 10 free throw attempts in a playoff game is really good for We Got Us. I mean, those are free buckets, especially in a league like this where points matters so much. just when you're trailing like that and just fouling, it puts you in a really rough spot. And Top Dogs had the rough end on that one. But we, like you said, Cade, before, I mean, I was a little shocked seeing Shy not playing as much, but that didn't mean he was not a leader for that team still. He was still calling things out from the sidelines, which is always something you want to see in a basketball game. So we got us definitely had a good staple win, shooting just under 70% in the field goal percentage, which is definitely something that's really ideal. Still struggled around the 3 point line, but I think eventually this team's going to realize that the three ball is not what wins them games. It can help for sure if they're hitting their shots, but in a league like this where the rims are so small and it's 4-on-4, there's a lot more space on the court. You got to utilize it and get to the basket when you can.
Yeah, definitely a more aggressive game whenever Jamari and Kubi are showing up. I know they've missed a few games, and this team's seen so many different lineups and matchups. But if this core can kind of stay together throughout the playoffs, this is a very strong team, and one we could see maybe an upset in next week, or maybe a finals bound team. But um, Matt, I want to give you a chance. I know you're always riding with top dogs, so I want to give you a chance to give them a little send off before we don't talk about them anymore since they're out. But talk about top dogs. Talk about what they did, maybe what they could have done to finish this game and close it out in that fourth quarter. They had a hot start. I think it was 20-15 in the first quarter. So talk about what they could have done a little differently.
The top dogs, the one thing we talked about this before the show, they shot very, very well. They shot over 50% from three and they shot over 60 from everywhere pretty much. But, you know, so they came ready to play. They came, ready to, make buckets. And, they started off hot. I think from we got us's perspective, top dogs, they play a little bit more of a methodical, a little bit of a slower pace to everything that they do. And I think, we got us, they just, when you have super athletes like Derek Revelis and Jamari Robinson, who are college football players, they don't necessarily need to start off hot. They're going to be there, especially with a team that, doesn't necessarily play with that high motor off the bat. It would have been interesting to see this season if you had Ethan Austin and Zachary Pickney's players that play a little bit faster and play a little bit more finesse on the offensive end, how that aspect dynamic could have translated into sort of their play this year. I just think it was a matter of time. They've got, we got us as plus defenders. They can turn it up another gear because of the athleticism they had, the sheer jumping ability some of those players had. And I think in the end that sort of just that won out in the end. But top dogs, they put as good an effort as I think you could expect from them. You can't. I think they can say that they did absolutely the best they could in this game.
Yeah, and it was just came down to their athleticism, stamina. They're age-wise an older team than we got us, and they're just not as fast as Derek and Jamari, who I mean, they're football players and very good football players at that. So, and they're playing currently, so their stamina, their conditionings, everything's top notch. And when you got guys that are out of their prime and top dogs, it's hard to keep up with that. They did what they could. Like if these guys were any bit faster and just more agile, top dogs would be scary, and those key guys that were missing for them would have added a lot to that fast play style, like you said. Um, it could have been a lot different of a top dogs team, but that's all what ifs, and it's in the past now. But yeah, we got us moves on to the semifinals, where they will be facing Glock Boys once again. A very fun matchup in the past, so I'm very excited. We'll talk about that one after we talk about our next game, and that game being Gang Green versus OTM. And wow, this game was probably the best game of the season to watch. It was fun, it was exciting, it was loud. Guys were yelling at each other, guys were getting each other's faces. Um, yeah, no one was safe. The refs weren't safe. I wasn't safe. I was getting yelled at. Everyone was getting yelled at. It was awesome. It was fun. Gang Green took this one 58-57, a 1 point game. A bit of a controversial finish, I do have to say. There was a foul call. I had it on HD. I rewatched it. Definitely was a foul on Quandel driving to the basket, and 2 fouls in that last 2 minutes means you're shooting free throws no matter what. So he was shooting. Um, but if I was refing, maybe I wouldn't call that. it definitely prevented him from getting to the basket. But it was a close game. But it stinks to kind of see a really hard fought battle end in a free throw. But that being said, the battle was very entertaining, and it was a well earned win from Gang Green. They fought the whole time, and they shot a lot worse. They shot 51%, which is great, which is a great shooting percentage for a team. To OTM 63, and they even fouled. They got 7 more fouls than OTM, and they still came away with this win. And I think that's a testament to them hitting more 3-point shots, kind of going on runs. Shout out Vincent Sumler, who helped them get on those runs. I think he had 8 points in the span of 3 minutes. I think in the third or second quarter, that just ignited a fire within the Gang Green. And it wasn't until that fourth quarter where they kind of let OTM slip back into it, and it got tied up. And it came down to that last second foul shot. I said last week that a big factor in this game would be Quandell, and he definitely was. I mean, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 5 steals. He led his team in rebounds, assists, and steals. In his play, it was just the most impactful, I think. Josh Monty scored the most with 18, but the way Quandell played, he really tired the defense. He got down low, got OTM fouling him, and whenever he was, caught out in the paint, he dished it out to Josh Monty or Vincent or Kwame. Kwame showed up actually this week. I think his 5th game. He only played 4 in the regular season, just enough to squeak into playing in the playoffs. But he showed up, added 11. A very good game from him. Yeah, he brings a different energy to Gang Green that helps them go on these runs, and him and Vincent were able to push them in that third quarter when I think Josh Monty actually subbed out, and it was when those guys subbed in that added that fuel to the fire, and they were able to kind of squeak a big enough lead to kind of let themselves relax in that fourth quarter, even though maybe you shouldn't have. OTM slipped back or came back, but the lead slipped, and they were able to squeak it out with that free throw at the end. If this was a 7-game series, it would be going to game 7, and I would have no idea. It would be a coin flip going into that 7th game. I would love to see this series go to 7 games, but we got to move on to the semifinals, and Gang Green will be moving on. Matt, you were watching a bit of this game. You want to talk about the final kind of minutes? What was happening with that. Talk about what OTM did to kind of come back. Talk about Shaq. He led the way. Talk about all of that.
Yeah, so I saw a good part of this game, especially in the beginning. I felt like, Gang Green just brought sort of an energy that was very difficult to deal with. I thought they made it difficult on their team with other team with the mental game, and that was very difficult to deal with all game. You know, OTM has some has scores, and Shaq Murray put up a lot of points, as expect he would, and it was kind of the little details, I think, in the end that made things tough. One of the things that was difficult about sort of the uproar that Gang Green created was, as we talked about, was at those situations where you had to shoot a field goal, they did not make those situations very calm. And there were, some guys who didn't shoot as great from the free throw line as they have in the season. And, it was a game of inches, and that mattered in the end. So there's little things that kind of didn't go so well for OTM, I think, in the end.
Yeah, the 1-point games, it's always the little things that will determine who comes out on top. And, turnovers, I think OTM had 4 more. Definitely felt like they had more than that than Gang Green. But it was that pressure that Josh Monty showed on defense, and kind of vocally that pressure the entire team showed. It kind of got into the heads of OTM, missing some key free throws, and especially in a 1-point game, those are important, like you said. Steven, talk about OTM a little bit before we kind of send them off. Talk about their fight. Talk about what Gang Green did as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, OTM, definitely one of my favorite teams to watch throughout the course of the season. They have a lot of explosive players like Shaq Murray, Terrence Gallo. But just kind of how Dan Green said in the post game interview after they won is they said you blew it. And talking about OTM, you look at the numbers without any team name on the paper, the team that shot 60%, 40, and 64 definitely won the game, right? No, no, not in this case. They did not. Dan Green had less shooting percentages all across the board, had 5 more fouls, and had an 8-point fourth quarter and still managed to win the game. It kind of shows you the mindset that Dan Green had. It's like, it's now or never. This is a great team that we have almost beat before. I believe this team's matched up about right before the snowstorm that we had. And that was also a very close game where OTM snuck it out. And I think Dan Green did a really good job of staying as one rather than, blaming this guy for that or, saying it's this guy's fault. They really played as a team. They represented that name on the jersey. And they showed a lot of that spirit in the interview as well. But I think Dan Green definitely got the best of OTM in the mental stage. And, OTM, we've said it plenty of times on the podcast. You stop Shaq Murray. Now you're kind of limiting their scoring. Now, Shaq Murray did have 29 points, but no one else had double figures other than Shaq Murray when it came to scoring the basketball, which is definitely the biggest difference. He literally had half their points, if not just about more than half. So I think Dane Green did a very good job defensively, and it also comes with, Bush Carter leading in 3 different categories, having a double-double, 5 steals. And Kwame Bell, really good lateral defender, perimeter. Great matchup for Shaq Murray for them. And you just kind of, at the end of the day, it was just Dane Green's game to win with all the chances they had. I agree with you. I wish it didn't end off the way it did. I wish it was more of a buzzer beater or something. But a win's a win. And the game's a game. So not much you can do there.
Yeah, yeah, about the ending. I mean, we all wish it ended a little more exciting. I wish every game ended in a buzzer beater. But except the ones I'm winning, I'd rather just win easily. But yeah, great game from Josh Monty defensively on Shaq. Shaq averages 28 point something, so this was just an average Shaq game. We needed him a little bit hotter. He was shooting very well, over 70%. I just wish he got the ball more, maybe was more aggressive on offense. I wish he was the one to put up some shots that were kind of forced up. I'd rather see Shaq forcing up one of those shots than one of these other guys. I did say in order to win, they needed it more than Shaq to get double-digit points, and that didn't happen. And I said for Dan Green, in order for them to win, Quandale needs to show up. Kwame needs to show up. They both did that. I needed Kwame to actually show up to the facility, and I needed Quandale to show up playing like he has been playing. That's what I mean by that, and that's what happened. Big game from Vincent Sumler. We can't let go under the radar, though. He gave them that. I think the game was a close game. They might have only been up 6 points. He hit a turnaround 3-pointer. He was going crazy. He was getting his team hyped, and I think he really lighted a fire under them that, shot them into that second half, the third quarter that they kind of fell apart in, but they were able to stay with it in the fourth quarter and squeak it out. And yeah, awesome game to watch. And I hope the rest of the playoffs is as exciting as this game. And I hope Dan Green brings that same energy next week because they're definitely going to need it. And we'll be talking about next week right now. That will be the semifinals deciding who's going to the finals and who has a chance to win it all. Yeah, let's talk about these matchups. And these guys have played each other twice before already, both matchups. It's Glock Boys versus We Got Us, Who's Next versus Gang Green. And Glock Boys, actually, this is the same matchup as week 1. I wanted to shout that out. I think that's kind of cool. Same exact matchup. Glock Boys played We Got Us, and Who's Next played Gang Green. Just funny little parallel and how that all comes full circle here in the semifinals. Glock Boys won that first week matchup by 40. Crazy blowout. 40. I think it was 40. And then the next matchup was a little closer, but still Glock Boys won it. But I think we're gonna see a full We Got Us team It's going to be the best of the best from We Got Us. They're going to give it their all. And Glock Boys have had an up and down season, but I'm hoping everyone shows up healthy and ready to play because they're going to need it against a hot We Got Us. Glock Boys are going to have it's going to be they're going to have almost 3 weeks off coming into this game because of the snowstorm and the bye. So maybe they'll be rusty. We Got Us. They played a great game, and they're coming off a hot win where Derek and Jamari led the way. So maybe we're going to see more of the same from them, or maybe we're going to see Kubi and Shai step up. Kubi's definitely going to have to, lock down Amandi if they want to win. Amandi, leading scorer in the league, 30 points a game. Someone has to match up with him, and I think Kubi honestly might be the best matchup for him in the league. It seems Mondi kind of blows by everybody, but Kubi is a very, very fast defender, I think, and he has the length to kind of match up with him. And then for the other guys on Glock Boys, I think Derek just is going to be able to lock down Geo. Even though Geo's a little taller, Derek kind of has that vertical to kind of, compensate for that. And yeah, Derek's help defense is always read perfectly. Whenever somebody's getting posted up, you see Derek kind of eyeing him, seeing if he can go for a steal, and those little plays are going to add a lot to this game when we're seeing a very close game here. Even though Glock Boys have won both matchups pretty easily, this is a different We Got Us, and hopefully Glock Boys are ready. Steven, talk about this one a little bit. Talk about what Glock Boys are going to have to do, what We Got Us is going to have to do, and then tell us your winner. Tell us who you're going with.
So this is definitely probably one of the more even matchups in the league as of right now. It definitely a toss up, even though now I want to I don't know if this is true or not, but there was a time in Glock Boy's season where Geo kind of had a hurt shoulder, and I don't believe he played against that We Got Us team when they still won it. Is I believe Glock Boy snuck it out without Geo being 100%. But now you have Geo who showed that his shoulder's feeling like a shoulder again. He's shooting mid-range jump shots over you. They could say they gave him the reason why they won the other day or a few weeks ago before the snowstorm. And it's going to come down to defense for sure. I mean, these two teams are both very possible of scoring a lot of points, especially Glock Boys, who we have seen almost drop 100 many times. But We Got Us being the strong defensive powerhouse that they are. It's going to be tough and it's going to be tiring. Stamina's going to matter. Weaver is not an easy guard, and neither is Geo. They're totally two different guards as well. Geo's more of a pull-up jump shot kind of guy, and Weaver, as much as he loves shooting a three, he's a really good slasher at that. So it's going to be really tough. It's going to come down to which team gets more rebounds. It's going to come down to who can get less free throw attempts. It's going to be a gritty game. It's going to be grit. But I think, in my eyes, I do think Glock Boys sneaks this one out. I think the Glock Boys are kind of favored because just what we saw in that Top Dogs game is we saw a lot of complaining. I'm going to be honest. No one gets the foul calls that they want. Now all of a sudden you're playing a whole different mentality game. Not only are you mentally against the other team, but now it's kind of a personal battle, and that's just not something you want to fight in the semifinals.
Yeah, it's definitely one of these bigger games with so much more on the line. You gotta stay composed, and definitely in these next few weeks, each team's just gonna have to, quiet out the refs. They we all know what it is by now. Everyone's gonna complain, but I think they really got to take a step back, just play the game of basketball. Let the refs kind of do what they do. They do the same thing every week. They're not gonna make a call they haven't made in the last 4 weeks. You know what to expect. You're not gonna get every call, so don't want every call. If we're playing pickup ball on the street, no one wants to play with a guy who's gonna, call every single foul, and just play with the same level of energy that you're going to play with in those big games in the playoffs, and just because the complaining about the rest is going to shift your momentum and shift your mentality, and it's definitely gonna just ruin the vibe. And no one wants to hear that. I think it happened to OTM. I think they kind of got in each other's heads. Gang Green was able to get in their head. I think that was a real reason on how Gang Green was able to win. And mentality is such an underrated factor in the games, and I think whoever plays with a stronger mind in this game kind of comes out on top. Matt, Glock Boys, we got us. Kind of tell us who you're going with.
Yeah, Glock Boys and We Got Us. Interesting story with this game. Shy Hicks, he's got background with this. A lot of players on this team kind of went out on his own, started his own kind of thing this year. Um, this is sort of the payoff of that. It's time to sort of show that this team has sort of come, as far as you thought it could. And for Amandi, especially, I mean, if Gio shows up and plays like he's got two good arms, that's going to be really, really tough. I know he dealt with a lot, but his stat line was tremendous all year. That could be really, really difficult to deal with. But look, like you know, I know for Amandi, he probably looks at the record of the team and feels like, for himself and for what, he believed this team was capable of and some of the things he felt like was earned. They didn't quite have the record that they did. If you get to the finals, that all sorts of goes away. That's where it really, really matters. So I could really see him coming in and putting up like 50 points and just having a monster game and sort of wiping some of that stuff that he was unhappy with away and coming into the finals on a really, really high sort of positive note. Like, you can be the 8-8 Giants, and if you go to the Super Bowl and you punch the undefeated Patriots in the mouth, everyone forgets.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the closest game this week. Maybe not as close as OTM Gangrene was when I had to predict that, but I honestly I don't know who I want to go with. I mean,
Okay,
last
I
time.
didn't actually pick, did I? I'm going with Glock Boys for this one.
All right. See, now I feel bad if no one picks We Got Us, so maybe that'll alter my pick here. But so last time this team played, or these two teams played, was week 8, I believe. Amandi 29 points, Geo 19 points, Leon Canton 17, Jay Warren 12. Um, and We Got Us, Derek led the way 21, Shy had 20. Ben St. Felix had 18, which we don't really see, so that's a bit of an outlier here. And then there was no Jamari, no Kubi, and Glock Boys won 83-66. So, you know, it wasn't, it was less than 20 for Glock Boys, but, I think Jamari and Kubi have enough to bring to the table to kind of close that out a little closer. And as much as Amandi's been playing as well, much as as well as Amandi's been playing this season, I just don't know if that can translate against a completely built We Got Us. And if this was 3 weeks ago, of course I'm picking Glock Boys um, over We Got Us, but I think they've just grown in these last few games more than we thought they would. And Glock Boys have just been up and down this season. I think they had to play Who's Next twice, and it kind of just shifted their momentum, especially with Gio's injury. Um, and yeah, it, I don't think I'm not gonna let We Got Us go out with nobody picking them. So I think I'm gonna pick We Got Us for an upset. Um, I think Kubi brings enough defensively. It took him a little bit to get into his rhythm, but he's kind of grown these last few weeks, and I think he understands how to play on these 8.5 foot rims, along with Jamari and Derek. Derek just played an incredible game this week, and if Gio or Amandi aren't on Derek, uh, it's gonna be hard to contain him. Leon's a good defender, so that's going to be the interesting matchup to kind of look into. But I'm going to go with We Got Us. The amount of confidence they've had in going into this playoffs. I've talked with some of the guys, and they're like, just watch and learn. We're always going to, pick ourselves as the team name goes. We Got Us, and yeah, I think We Got Us has what it takes, and I think they just have a lot more guys that are going to change the way the game is played in Chai and Kubi and Derek and Jamari. I think that's such a strong four. I think they have a stronger four than Glock boys. Um, as good as Jay, you know, in Leon add, I don't think it's enough to match what Shy and Kubi add if you count them as the three and the four. Um, yeah, so that's why I'm gonna lean towards We Got Us, but this is the same thing as OTM Gangrene. It's hard to pick. I don't want to upset anybody because I love both these teams, and I got you know I got respect for both teams, and I want both teams to win, but that's not how it works. And I got to pick who I think is going to win, not who I want is going to win. But um, I think We Got Us is going to show up and surprise a lot of people, and I'm going to stick with them this game. I've stuck with them earlier in the season, and it's paid off here and there, so I'm sticking with We Got Us. And let's go into our next game. And this is the loud game. I think maybe we're gonna lean towards one team more, but upsets happen, and it's one game. It's the playoffs. No one has a record in the playoffs. It's a fresh start, so Gangrene hasn't beat Who's Next yet, but the games have been close when they played. A lot closer than the other games, which is just surprising. Gangrene was at the bottom of the standings for the majority of the season until they beat top dogs. But it's just, I mean, Who's Next is just Who's Next. They have an all-star lineup. Matt, talk about who you think's gonna win. Talk about why they're gonna win.
I think I'm gonna go with Who's Next. I think they're gonna end up winning. I think Gangrene is gonna bring all their bluster, all their trash talk, and this is a team that can handle that. I just think they play so well together, and they're not afraid to talk some too. But they're gonna press the hell out of them, and I think in the end that's gonna be a lot to deal with. Um, one of the sort of the you heard a little bit of it last week in the All-Star and the draft sort of podcast, but the question of how much offense does Who's Next really had. I'd love to see EJ go off and score like 40 points. He's absolutely capable of that. Nobody questions his athletic gifts, and his youth and all the things he has going for him. But another story is it's time for Kevin Views. It's time, Kevin. It's the playoffs. That was the goal. That was we talked a lot about that, especially being the year. Kevin's had an amazing year in Rhode Island. He's absolutely shown he's got it this year. And he's got some history with Gangrene. There's been some John back and forth. Kevin's got a bone to pick with some of those Gangrene players. It's time, Kevin. It's time to bring all those 3-pointers you've been shooting alongside Noah James over in Rhode Island. Bring it over here. This is your game. This is your game to step up and show that you're still a guy.
It wouldn't be playoff talk without calling out Kevin Views. I mean, it always happens in Massachusetts. I'm not sure about Rhode Island's post-game show, but we always bring up Kevin Views, and playoff Kevin has not been the regular season Kevin we're used to seeing. I mean, his first season here in Massachusetts, he was the MVP, and I think he was pretty quiet in the playoffs. He seems to kind of step back in the playoffs a little bit, but the way he's been playing in Rhode Island, that can easily happen. But it's just Who's Next has so many guys that can change up this game. And I mean, EJ, the last time they talked trash to EJ, he then hit like 3 threes in a row. EJ is not the guy to talk trash to. That fuels him, and I think that fuels Kevin. And Kevin, I want to see a big game from Kevin. He has a lot in this game. His former teammate Josh Monty, they always go back and forth in this game. Josh Monty leads the way for Gangrene offensively. So I think there's a lot riding on this game for Kevin. Show us why playoff Kevin is changing this year. Change the meaning of what playoff Kevin means. But EJ can easily have a big game. But we haven't even mentioned Darwin. We haven't even mentioned Angel. We haven't mentioned any of those guys because there's just so many that can impact this game in a positive way. Yeah, I mean, who's next going into the playoffs without Yala? I think Yala was there when they played Gangrene the first time. Um, so that's a difference in this matchup. I don't know if Kwame Bell played last time they played. Let me check it real quick. Check it. We got a who's next? Here it is. It was a let's see, 16-point who's next win. Josh Monty scored 26. Quandel only scored 9 points. And Vincent only scored 3. He shot only 1 for 6. And if he plays the way he played this week, that changes the things. Quandale needs to step up, but it's hard when they have a much bigger team than OTM. EJ led the way in points, 20 for that game. But yeah, no Kwame Bell in this game, so that changes things if he shows up. But for who's next, I mean, I want to see a big game from Kevin and EJ. Darwin can lead the way. If he has to step back offensively, he can. We know what Darwin is. We know what kind of leader he is and what he brings to each play, each game in his playmaking, leadership. He's going to do what he has to do to win. Gangrene's going to try talking trash. I think this is a different game. This is not OTM. You're not playing OTM again, even though they've played them like 3 times in the last like 3, 4, 5 weeks. This is not OTM. Talking trash is not going to work like it worked last week. It can work for a couple of the guys maybe on who's next, but EJ's going to, feed off that. Darwin, I don't think I've ever seen him get into it with another player at legacy leagues. Maybe it'll work for some guys, but EJ is fueled by that. We saw that last time they matched up. Gangrene's gonna have to play better than they did, even though they won. They're gonna have to show up. Quandale's gonna have to make a statement in the paint defensively. Defense is gonna be key, and it's gonna be stopping that momentum that who's next kind of goes with, because Gangrene has led these games in the first quarters and had them very close in the second quarter going into the second half. So we know Gangrene is capable of going toe to toe with who's next. It's possible. They just have to do that for 40 minutes. And as whether or not they can do that, I'm more confident in who's next. So that's why I'm going to stick with who's next. I just think EJ is going to come out hot, especially if they talk trash. But Gangrene, I know you guys listen. This is a different game. Go back and watch your first games with them. Make a game plan. This is not going to be an easy game. You're going to have to think about this matchups, subs, who's got who defensively, who you attack on offense. This is going to be an important game to kind of go into. If you want to win this, this is going to have to be more than a men's league preparation, you average preparation for a men's league game you do. You're going to have to study some past games and really lock in and make a game plan. And, I love upsets, so if Gangrene pulls this off, I'm not going to be sad. It's going to be fun to talk about. Steven, talk about who you think is going to win this game. I'm sticking with who's next.
Yeah, I mean, numbers, who's next has not lost the game so far this year. I would not necessarily say this lead is a 3-point lead, but I mean, who's next just rains threes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's going to be tough for Gangrene to kind of hang in there. So, and what I mean by that is I'm picking Gangrene to win this game. I love me a good Cinderella story, Cade. I'm telling you. This Cinderella is going to be one to watch. Winner of 2026. I'm picking Gangrene to win because, listen, it's tough to beat a team 3 times in the season. It really is. And, Gangrene's just got to play more physical. Your defense starts at half court. You don't let them dribble the ball up to the 3-point line. You start at that half court line and you match up on every player. You got to limit the 3 ball between Darlin and EJ. Those are typically the two players that shoot the 3 ball the most. But I'm going to go with Gangrene on this game. I love a good Cinderella. I really do. And I think they actually can win this game if they really put their heart to it. I think who's next might come into this game a little light. You're like, oh, it's Gangrene. It's the 5th seed. Yeah, whatever. No, you're going to prove to them that you are wearing that jersey for a reason and you're going to win this thing. And I'm going to be there to see it. I'm gonna be right there in that corner. I'm gonna watch it with them.
Let's go. I love it. I love the fuel.
Yeah.
Gangrene's gonna love that too. They're gonna be rocking with you the whole game. They're gonna all
Can I
come
just
up to
add
you
one thing,
before.
Cade?
Yeah.
So, and I said a lot of stuff about who's next, but the one thing I want to say about the Mass League, and it's this whole year, it's this playoffs. You look at some of the other leagues, and I think if you look at the brackets that were set up for the playoffs, you have a pretty good idea of who's in, who's sort of out. There's clear haves and have-nots. I don't feel that way about Massachusetts. I can imagine scenarios where an upset occurs. I think there's a path for all these teams to sort of potentially be in the finals that are continued these Final Four. So that is something that's going on special in Massachusetts. If you're a team still in the playoffs, I think despite what's said here, despite what happened last week or at the beginning of the season, I think objectively most people who've watched all year can say that there's a potential for all these teams to sort of make it pretty far.
Massachusetts does it different. What can we say? I wrote the script perfectly. I'm just kidding. I didn't rig any of these games, but yeah, I think this is as good of a playoffs we could have had. OTM versus Gangrene was a masterclass for, especially if you're watching the game. It was just so fun to watch. And then who's next? Or sorry, we got us. Top Dogs was a great matchup for a 6 and a 3 seed, being a 2-point game in the last 2 minutes. That's as good as you can get with that. And then who's next? They're the undefeated Patriots. No one expects them to lose, but you see what happened with that. But it's the Gangrene is the best matchup all season they've had, whether it's entertainment wise or just close games. Gangrene has given them the best games, and I am so excited for that game. It's going to be so fun to watch, and I think it's a 9 o'clock game and a 10 o'clock game. It might be, so we're gonna be able to watch both. So I'm very excited about that. I hated not seeing every play from one game and having to go back and forth, but hopefully we all get to watch it. Um, and Glock Boys, we got us. That game was super entertaining the last time they played. Both times they played, especially because some of the guys that show up for Glock Boys have history with the guys on We Got Us. Same with We Got Us and Glock Boys. So they're chirping from the sideline as well as on the court, and that just they have history. And Gangrene and Who's Next already have history from just playing each other this season, let alone in the past seasons. But We Got Us, Glock Boys, that's a much more personal game, and it's going to be so fun to watch. I am so excited. It's possibly the best This is probably the best matchups we could have had in the first 2 rounds, and I'm excited to see who gets to the finals. And I'm sure that final is going to be amazing. Yeah, I'm super excited. Thank you, boys, for joining this week. Steven, Matt, shout out you guys. I've been your host, Cade. Stick around, guys. We got exciting playoffs ahead of us, then some All-Star week activities. It's going to be fun. We'll see you all next week. Peace.